What's going on, y'all? Welcome to the very first episode, the debut episode, or the debut live episode, I should say, of the Mission Ready Men podcast on the SHR Media Network. We have a lot to talk about this morning. Election results, the leftist meltdowns as a result, and what this could mean for the country going forward. So I want to thank you all for joining us here on the Mission Ready Men show on the SHR Media Network, where you can catch all of the other great shows like The Edge of Liberty with Sackhead Sean, The Reaver of Common Sense with Jersey Joe, and BZ's Berserk Bobcat Saloon with the bloviating Zeppelin himself, BZ. Now, before we get into everything that we're going to talk about, please go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, share this video. The more you like and share and subscribe, the more people we can reach. And despite the fact that Trump won, we're still, I don't trust that the big tech overlords are not going to continue to try to suppress conservative content. We did see a slight increase in traffic over yesterday, but I don't trust that. So please go ahead and hit the like button and share all the shows on the SHR Media Network. But you can follow me and Mission Ready Men at Mission Ready Men on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And for our merch, you can head over to missionreadymen.com and click shop, and you'll be able to find all the great designs that we have there. All right, now that the business is out of the way, let's get after it. Now, for those of you who are new to the channel, haven't seen me on the Mission Ready Men podcast previously, or the election coverage where you saw me, I'm just going to introduce myself for a minute and let you know where I'm coming from and what we're going to be doing here on the Mission Ready Men podcast. I am a Christian first and foremost, then a conservative. And what we're trying to do here, well, you know what, let me back up. I did have a podcast before called the Liberty Cast, which was straight political commentary, conservative political commentary. I am a strong advocate for the Second Amendment and our constitutional rights. And that's how I approached the Liberty Cast content. And I got sick a few years ago and had to abandon the podcast. I just couldn't do it. And I'm not going to get into all the details of that other than to say it was serious. And it was at that point that I found my faith. I just asked God to heal me, and if he did, then I would spend my life serving him, and he did. And so here I am. And with the podcast, I still wanted to do political commentary and stuff like that once I recovered, but I also wanted to make sure that I approached it from a biblical perspective and how the Word of God impacts our political, or how it should impact our political sphere. And so with that, it also was clear to me that men in this country and pretty much around the world are under attack. Masculinity is perceived as toxic. Traditional roles are seen as toxic and misogynistic and oppressing women and all of that nonsense. And so what I wanted to do with Mission Ready Men was to equip, well, to come at the political content from a biblical perspective, obviously, and focus on men and what men need to do to step up and take this country back. And we kind of saw that with this past election, where a lot of men, not so much black men, unfortunately, although more black men than in previous elections did vote the right way. But we'll talk about that another time. But what I wanted to do was make sure that we addressed men specifically and gave them the tools, equipped them with the knowledge to approach life from a biblical perspective, and equip them with the tools that they needed to do that. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about political issues of the day and approach it from a biblical perspective. And we're going to talk about the Second Amendment. We're going to talk about the Constitution. We'll talk about our rights. But again, we are going to approach it from a Christian biblical perspective. And so I hope that that's for you. And if it is, I am happy to have you. And if it's not, give it a listen and give it a watch and see if we can persuade you. But before we move on, I just wanted to talk about that and give my perspective and introduce myself. And at this point, you know what? Let's go ahead and do a word from a sponsor real quick, and then we'll get into the issues of the day. And this is my first live show, so bear with me while we get everything straightened out. And let's go ahead and get this started. There we go. All right. Are you tired of woke companies trying to destroy our country and strip us of our freedoms? Big Mobile is no exception to that. In fact, we should be calling them woke companies. Did you know that Big Mobile gives tens of millions of dollars every year to organizations that are trying to take away the very freedoms that you and I are working so hard to defend? It's time that we do something about that. So here's the good news. You do have a choice in the matter, and there is an alternative. Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider who shares your values. They sponsor the very best nationwide 4G and 5G coverage on all networks and exceptional 100% US-based customer support. And I can tell you from experience that the difference between Patriot Mobile and our previous carrier is even more stark than just night and day. It's ridiculous. But Patriot Mobile, they donate a portion of every dollar earned to conservative organizations that fight for our freedoms. They support organizations like First Liberty, Turning Point USA, Susan B. Anthony List, NRA, Folds of Honor, Students for Life of America, and many, many more. This year, they will give more than $1.5 million to conservative causes, and with your help, they aim to double that next year. The time is now. Our votes are no longer enough, despite the good outcome yesterday. But we must stand together and support other like-minded companies that share our beliefs and values. Your cell phone is one way you can stand against the left and help make America great again. Patriot Mobile offers discounts to veterans and first responders, NRA members, and families with multiple lines. Learn more at patriotmobile.com/Jackson, where you can get access to those discounts. That's patriotmobile.com/Jackson. MRM.com/Jackson, and you can get access to all of the discounts that we're talking about here. Use promo code Jackson now and get a free month of service. Or you can call 817-380-9081, talk to one of their exceptional customer service reps, and use the code Jackson and get access to that discount. All right. Now that we got that out of the way, let's get into the obvious big news of the day, even though we've had 24 hours to process it now. But obviously, we're going to talk about President Trump's landslide victory over cackling Kamala Harris. Now, how did he win? What was it that propelled him to such a decisive victory? Leading up to the election, I wasn't sure that it would turn out quite this way in terms of his margin of victory. I thought it was going to be somewhat closer, just because I didn't have any faith in the left. I thought they would turn out more than they did, and I thought they would, and the possibility is still there for them to cheat. Make no mistake about it. But I didn't think that it would be as lopsided a victory for Trump as it turned out to be. But why did he win? Well, Kamala, the cackler, was just a terrible candidate. She wasn't picked by any primary process. She was installed. And I think had they actually had a proper primary, she probably would not have won the nomination. But they did what they did because they hate democracy and they hate people in general. And so they installed her as the heir apparent, and she was terrible. She couldn't string two sentences together. And when her teleprompter went, I'm not going to play any of the videos. We've had enough of that over the past few months. But when her teleprompter went out, she just completely lost it. And when she's in a one-on-one interview, or when she's taking questions, she just went into word salad mode. She could not do it. She could not hack it. And so that was one reason why she lost, although I think that could have been overcome had her opponent not been Trump. But I think Trump won because people remember what their lives were like when he was president 4 years ago. That's number one. Number two, I think, is the assassination attempts. I think that those assassination attempts softened him a little bit, made him more relatable. You could definitely see a difference in his demeanor after that happened. And I think that contributed to his broad appeal after that. And I mean, let's just call it what it is. The country has been in decline since Biden and Harris took over. Between the open borders, the fentanyl crisis, inflation, energy prices, energy costs, all of that has contributed to a general malaise in the country. And people just can't afford to do the things that they could afford to do 4 years ago. Businesses have been failing. Businesses have been struggling. Our business struggled mightily during these past 4 years. It's been ugly. So it was pretty much, if you had any common sense, if you had more than two brain cells to rub together, the choice between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump is obvious, or was obvious. And last but not least, which is probably the most important, actually, I believe that his victory was ordained by God. 100%. Because when you look at the assassination attempt and how he survived, as far as I'm concerned, that was the hand of God turning his head right at that precise moment. And when you look at everything else that has happened between the indictments, when he, every time they indicted him, his poll numbers went up. The convictions of that ridiculous novel legal theory. I mean, it is, if his name wasn't Donald Trump and he had not been running for president, not only would he not have been convicted of that crime, those crimes, those 34 counts, it wouldn't have even been brought to court. He probably would have paid a fine and that would have been the end of it. But because they hated him so much, they decided to do that, and it helped. It helped him. Everything that they tried to throw at him ended up helping his bid. And now, I mean, everybody was upset. Conservatives were upset when that was going on. But with the benefit of hindsight now that he's actually won, you can look back and see that God's hand was in all of that. And that has led to his victory and his resounding victory. Not just a victory, but a mandate. The Senate the Republicans have control of the Senate, and it's looking like they're going to gain a seat or two, at least in the House. And with that, Republicans have control of all three branches. And so now is the time for them to get stuff done. And I think with Donald Trump's leadership, because he said himself that if it hadn't been for the hand of God, he wouldn't be here. If it hadn't been for the hand of God, he wouldn't have won the presidency. So I think that with his knowledge of that and the mandate that we have given the Republicans to actually get stuff done, I think that for the next 2 years, they're going to get stuff done. I'm praying that they get stuff done. And I think Trump is going to try. And I think that if there are too many swamp creatures in Washington still to try and thwart him, like we all know, Mitch McConnell's about to step down. Whoever his successor is, and I hope it's not John Thune or John Cornyn, because they're swamp creatures and they're going to step into Mitch McConnell's role and try to fight him every step of the way, just like he did. So I'm praying that they get a majority leader who will work with him and not against him. So that's why he won. And I think that if we follow that logically, I think God's hand will continue to be on him and continue to move this country back in the right direction. And speaking of moving the country in the right direction, all right, where did it go? Here we go. So like I said, speaking of moving the country in the right direction, there is a biblical theme that I want to touch on. Second Chronicles chapter 7 verse 14 says, "If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and I will forgive their sin and heal their land." That is one of the best passages and the best explanations for this country turning back to God. And I think that, like I said, with Trump's acknowledgement that he wouldn't be where he's at without the hand of God being on him, I think that that's what is about to happen, and I think we're about to see a revival of sorts. And there are a lot of people who are getting on him about the Bible that he started to sell, and doubt whether or not he's actually sincere in his declaration that he wouldn't be here without God, and that he's his acknowledgement of God's presence and things like that. There are people who are just saying he's grifting. I don't believe that. I don't believe that for a second. And I think he came to a realization, especially, and I think you could see it even before this, but I think especially after the assassination attempt on his life, I think there was a big difference in his demeanor, and a big difference in the way he carried himself, and he acknowledged God's presence even more after that. And so, with that passage that I just read and things like that, it was stunning to me to read prior to the election that so many Christians were planning to not vote. And I think it was the Washington Post actually had a breakdown that I didn't get a chance to put it in the show notes today, but they had a breakdown of all of the different demographics that voted, and Christian voting, the number of Christians who voted was down. And prior to the election, I read that between 30 and 40 million, depending on which source I read, Christians were planning on not voting. And that blew my mind. That absolutely blew my mind, because if even half of those Christians voted, not even half, if 10 or 15% of those Christians voted, Republicans, conservatives would never lose an election. And we would not be in the boat that we're in right now with these leftists just decimating children with abortion, child sacrifice, baby killing. We wouldn't be in a position where we're dealing with these leftists who are mutilating children and sterilizing them with surgeries and hormone blockers and things like that. If those Christians voted, we would not be in this position right now. We absolutely would not be in this position right now. Leftists would never win an election. Leftists would never win an election again if Christians took their responsibility of voting seriously. Because let's be honest, this country is still the greatest country the world has ever seen. The greatest country in the history of this planet. And it's a blessing from God to be here. And sitting back and watching leftists destroy it is not being a good steward of the blessings that God has given you. That's why Christians need to vote. Because not voting is abdicating that responsibility and not being a good steward of the blessings that you have been given by God. Because the Democrat Party is demonic. The Democrat Party, they sacrifice children and use government funds to do it, sacrifice children by the millions every year. How is that not the very definition of demonic? And like I said, the child sacrifice, the gender bending, gender confusion, mutilation of these kids. I actually had an interaction with someone. There was a meme where it basically said that the Democrats are demonic, and it talked about child sacrifice, child trafficking, just opening the border, just everything that the left does that they celebrate is a detriment to this country. And I had an interaction with somebody where they basically said that belief is delusional. Oh no, deranged. Deranged was the word. Deranged is not acknowledging the reality that the left is doing everything they can to destroy this country. And they're doing it with the children. Because if they kill as many as they can before they are even born, and then mutilate them to the point where they can no longer reproduce, what other explanation is there for that? It's not because it'll make them happy. All the research shows that those people tend to end up committing suicide. And not all of them, obviously, but a very high percentage of the people who end up in their clutches in that respect end up committing suicide. And so my prayer with all of this is that Donald Trump's election, taking control of the House and Senate, my prayer is that all of that leads to a revival. Obviously, we have a long way to go, but my prayer is that this leads to a revival, where, like 2 Chronicles 7:14 says, we humble ourselves and we turn to God and have Him heal our land. Now, a lot of people are asking Him to heal our land, but they're not humbling themselves. They're not acknowledging their part in it and repenting for their sin. And so we may have to drag a lot of these people kicking and screaming. No, we don't have to do that. But if enough of us do humble ourselves and turn back to Him, then we could be looking at a new renaissance of sorts in this country, where we get back to the peace and prosperity that propelled us to being the greatest country the world has ever seen for the first 250 years of our existence. And that is my prayer. I hope that's your prayer as well, because otherwise, and I've said this before, if we let this opportunity slip away, we may not be able to vote ourselves out of the next mess. And if we can't vote our way out, the alternative is not going to be pretty. And we don't have to get into all of that, but I'm just saying, let's make sure that that doesn't happen, shall we? All right. We talked about, or I mentioned earlier, that the left has been in full meltdown mode since Donald Trump won decisively. They have been in full meltdown mode. And it has been glorious to watch. It has been absolutely hilarious to listen to some of these people. And I could have compiled a whole stack of videos that we could watch and listen to, listening to these people just tie themselves in knots, tie themselves in complete knots over this victory. They just don't understand it. They don't, man, they don't get it. And I don't know that they ever will get it, to be honest. Sonny Hostin, and I didn't get this video in time because I wanted to play that one, but Sonny Hostin blamed white women, blamed sexism, blamed racism, and she's got to be one of the dumbest people. Well, pretty much everyone on The View is a complete idiot, but that's neither here nor there because I don't have that video. But I do want to play one video, or I want to play a few videos, but one that really stuck out to me among several, but one that really stuck out to me was Peppermint Patty, former press secretary for Joe Biden. She is, without a doubt, the second worst press secretary that ever went to that podium. The first, the worst being obviously Cringe Jean-Pierre. But take a look at this and let me see if you can figure out exactly where she completely loses the plot.
Who owns Twitter, X, whatever we're calling it these days, X, who is a disinformation propagandist and now could potentially have a direct line to the Oval Office. I think this is a big, huge part of the story that it's hard to even digest fully at this moment. But you have Elon Musk, who owns Twitter, X, whatever we're calling it these days, X, who is a disinformation propagandist and now could potentially have a direct.
The irony of Peppermint Patty calling anyone a propagandist is it's just amazing. It is absolutely amazing because she was, up until Cringe Jean-Pierre, she's better at it than KJP for sure. But she was the queen. She was the queen of propaganda. And I call pretty much everyone in the media right now the American Pravda because they are all propagandists. They are all spreading the propaganda of the regime. Every last one of them. And for her to actually come out and say that somebody else is guilty of spreading propaganda is just, oh my goodness. I could not, my mouth literally, the first time I heard that was agape. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe she actually had the nerve to say that. But another talking head on MSDNC, and she's another one who's in the running for one of the dumbest people to ever sit in front of a camera. Joy Reid. And she is just listen.
She had the Taylor Swift, she had the Swifties, she had the Beehive. Like, you could not have run a better campaign in that short period of time. And I think that's still true. And I think it's important to say that, you know, anyone who has experienced or been in the United States for any period of time and experienced this country's history and knows it cannot have believed that it would be easy to elect a woman president, let alone a woman of color. Let's just be clear. And nothing that was true yesterday about how flawlessly this campaign was run is not true now. I mean, this really was an historic, flawlessly run campaign. She had Queen Latifah never endorses anyone. She came out and endorsed. You know, I mean, she had every prominent celebrity voice. She had the Taylor Swift, she had the Swifties, she had the Beehive. Like, you could not have run a better campaign in that short period of time. And I think
she really just said that she ran a flawless campaign. All right, let me just address that for a second. Her campaign was nothing but flawed from the word go, from the way it kicked off up until it ended. It was nothing but flaws. And for Joy Reid to sit up there and say that the Swifties and the Beehive and Queen Latifah were reasons why the campaign was so flawless is completely out of touch. Nobody cares who Queen Latifah endorsed. Nobody cares that Taylor Swift and her fans were behind Harris. Nobody cares if Beyonce and her family were behind. No one cares. And the fact that she's using those examples as reasons why the campaign was flawless is just woefully out of touch. Woefully out of touch. And to say otherwise, to sit there and say that, just, it's mystifying. It's truly mystifying that these people really believe that what these celebrities say has any impact on anyone with more than 2 brain cells to rub together. Seriously, no one cares. Flawless campaign. Just mind-boggling. Absolutely mind-boggling. But it's not just it is not just the American Pravda who are melting down and completely losing their minds. It's everyday people who you work with, people who you see every day on the street, people who bag your groceries, who pour your coffee. They are all melting down. And it is, I would say it's glorious to watch, but it's actually quite sad. It is actually quite sad. Just take a look at this. This is, oh my goodness. All right, sound's coming. Hang on. Just wow. Just what? And that's not even the worst one. I know Matt Walsh thinks it's the winner, but there have been so many meltdowns just like that and worse. What's wrong with these people? And when you think back to when when Biden won, I was upset. A lot of conservatives were very, very upset. None of us did this. None of us had temper tantrums in our vehicles. None of us, like that woman, that the famous one where she's on her knees screaming. There was somebody actually went as that person in a Halloween costume, but just it's really not funny. It's actually quite sad because this is indicative of a mental disorder, because normal people don't do this. Had Harris won, it would have been disastrous for this country. Absolutely, 100%. But I can't think of anyone in my circle that would have done this. Can you think of anyone who would have done this if Harris had won? No, we would have gone to work. We would have made preparations for whatever was going to happen, and we would have dealt with it just like we always do. We would have prayed. We would have continued with our lives. We would protest maybe when necessary, but we would not flip out. And it's not just that they flip out. It's not just that they flip out. It's that they actually set up their camera, hit record, and then flip out. What is that? That's not just being upset. That's not just displaying your mental disorder. That's trying to get attention for your mental disorder. Because that's not normal. That is not normal. And people who sincerely are flipping out, they're not setting up their cameras in their vehicles and recording it and then posting it to TikTok for the world to see. No. This is clout chasing right here. And all the ones that set up their cameras and do that is clout chasing. Now, yeah, my wife and I, we did a little YMCA dance video when Trump won. I don't know how far it went. I don't really care, because that was me. That was just funny. Trying to mimic Trump's YMCA dance. But this is a mental disorder brought on by demons. There's no other explanation for it. No other explanation for it. It's playing on my screen right here, and it's it's just hilarious to watch. I don't think it's ever going to get old. I don't think it's ever going to. Oh my goodness. All right, y'all. I think that's it. That's all I got for you this time. I will try to do better on the next one. The next one will be next Tuesday at 10 p.m. Central. 10 a.m. Central. I didn't finish my coffee yet. But please remember to hit the like button, subscribe, and share these episodes. And don't forget to tune into all of the SHR hosts. We have the Reaver of Common Sense with Jersey Joe, The Edge of Liberty with Sackhead Sean, and BZ's Berserk Bobcat Saloon with BZ. Tune into all of them. You will get some great content and insights from all of those guys. They're all great conservatives. They're all smart, and they'll give you some insights that you won't get anywhere else. And I hope that I deliver the same thing. But please go ahead and, like I said, and like and subscribe and share, so that we here on the Mission Ready Men podcast can share the gospel of Jesus Christ and the message of hope and the blessings of liberty that was promised to us by God, so that we can preserve what we have for future generations. And as always, when seconds count, the police are only minutes away, but the Lord is right there with you. So keep your prayers going up and your head on a swivel. God bless.